안녕하십니까. 네, 저는 소개받은 백남준 아트센터 관장 김성은입니다. 백남준을 비롯하여서 미디어 아트를 다루는 일을 하고 있는 사람으로서 우리 로랑 그라소 작가님의 작업을 흥미롭게 바라보고 있는 연구자로서 오늘 이제 작가님과 대화를 하게 돼서 아주 즐겁게 생각하고 있습니다. 학술적인 내용보다는 조금 편안하게 작가님의 그 작업 세계에 담긴 여러 가지 이야기들을 같이 들어보는 시간으로 하려고 합니다. 여러 저자들이 쓴 글들을 읽다 보니까 약간 비슷한 뜻을 가진 이 단어들이 이 작가님의 작업을 기술하는 데 많이 사용이 되고 있더라고요. 한국말로 얘기할 때 뭐 미스테리하다라는 동사라든가 잡히지 않는 일루시브하다라던가 아니면 스펙트럴, 힘나틱 뭐 이런 단어들로 작가님의 작업을 설명하는 글들을 많이 읽을 수가 있었어요. 굉장히 시적이기도 하고 굉장히 감각적으로 경험을 해야 되는 이제 그런 작품들이 다수를 이루고 있잖아요. 그런데 사실은 이 작가님의 작업의 방식은 상당 부분 연구에 기반한 작업을 하고 계시다는 것을 이제 우리가 알 수가 있습니다. 아마도 우리 한국에 계신 분들이 가장 익숙하게 이 작가님의 작업하면 떠오르시는 것이 그 리움미술관의 그 장 누벨의 건축으로 되어 있는 미래의 기억들이라는 네온 설치 작업으로 아마 많이들 알고 계실 거예요. 작가님이 한국에서 처음 했던 이 네온 작업이 2004년으로 거슬러 올라간다고 해요. 부산 비엔날레 2004년이라고 합니다. 이제 부산 비엔날레 당시에 그 설치했던 이 작업이라고 얘기를 해주셨는데요. 우리 작가님께서 이 네온 작업들에 대해서 살짝 얘기를 좀 먼저 해주시면 좋을 것 같습니다.
Thank you very much for your introduction and to accept the invitation of the gallery. Thank you also to the Perrotin team and everything they did for this project. You're right, I think, because it started to be a few years ago, but I think that the first big neon installation was for Busan Biennale with Manu Park as a curator, and it was really interesting because I remember when he invited me, it was during the holiday. I had to think about one project, and for me, title have always been important in my practice. The title is as important as the work itself. It's like a conceptual, also about the sound of the word, and also about, of course, the meaning and the fact that it's understandable in different language. So I had this practice of title, and it started to appear as neon, and I start to do neon for the title of each of my exhibition. So it starts like that. Here you have a neon, but it's not words, it's more a shape. So when Manu invites me, I start to think about something challenging. It's night for day, for night for day. So it's an endless loop of word. And night for day or day for night is a cinema technical. And by putting a blue filter on the lens of the camera, you create the feeling to be in the night time. So I use this first special effect in the history of cinema, and I create this neon based on this. I just change of scale, and as I said before, what I like about the exhibition I was invited to do in Korea is everything is possible. So there is no limit, I think, and it's really interesting for an artist that each invitation I had, the team was really concerned about the fact to make possible my wishes. So I asked a lot by doing this, but it was also, of course, the commission of the Biennale. So I asked to do this really big size neon, and the neon start to be like a landscape and like a sculpture. It's not anymore a sign, it's not anymore just a logo. It starts to be something physical and something sensorial, and it's part of my work, it's part of my practice to give this kind of sensoriality. So yes, regarding the introduction, that's true that I'm doing a lot of research for each project. I don't need people to understand or to have access to this research, actually. It's not necessary. The idea is that a child has to be able to have an experience in front of my work, and it's more about sensoriality, the aesthetic and the physical experience rather than the guideline or the concept. I think that very often we have a kind of pollution with the concept of the artwork, and very often as well it's a kind of very strong effect, it's a kind of advertising, but when you see an artwork you don't have an experience, you don't have an emotion, you don't have actually not so many things coming to you as a viewer. So the first idea is that physically, and also, of course, it could be also conceptually, you have to feel something.
의미 체계를 전달하는 단어들로 되어 있는 작품이지만 사실상 이 작품은 감각적으로 경험을 해야 된다. 이제 그렇게 저희가 이해를 할 수도 있을 텐데요. 사실 이 로랑 작가님의 많은 작품들의 경험에서 이제 중요한 것은 그 작품이 설치되어 있는 이 장소라고 할 수가 있을 것 같습니다. 지금 보고 계시는 모습은 역사적인 미술관에 개입한 듯이 보이는 로랑 그라소 작가님의 전시의 모습이고요. 2021년에 전남도립 미술관에서 했던 또 작가님의 개인전의 모습입니다. 이 전시는 또 미술관이긴 하지만 지금 이곳과 유사하게 화이트 큐브와 같은 전시실의 모습을 하고 있습니다. 제가 굉장히 흥미롭게 보는 부분 중에 하나는 작품의 제작을 위해서 탐구하는 어떤 장소, 그리고 그 작품을 전시하는 곳으로서의 장소를 탐구하는 이제 흥미로운 지점들을 발견하곤 하는데요. 야외에 설치된 모습들도 보실 수가 있고요. 네. 이 작품은 아마도 이제 많이들 아실 것입니다. 그 이제 전남도립 미술관에서도 선보인 적이 있고, 원래는 그 파리의 외곽에 있는 대형 그 콘크리트 사일로에 투사를 하는 이제 그런 종류의 이제 설치 작품인데요. 제가 이제 이 작품에 대한 내용을 읽으면서 이제 작가님께 좀 여쭤보고 싶었던 부분이, 이 작품은 그 태양의 활동에 대한 과학적인 데이터를 받아서 그것이 실시간으로 여러 가지 빛과 색으로 저 콘크리트 건축물에 이제 투사되는 이제 그런 방식으로 되어 있는 작품입니다. 과학적인 이 전문가들의 협업이 없이는 불가능한 작업이라고 생각이 들고, 이 협업 과정을 어떻게 애초에 시작하시고 그 협업 과정을 어떻게 설계하시며 그 협업 과정에서 작가님이 느끼시는 어려움 혹은 흥미로움, 그런 부분들에 대한 얘기를 좀 들어보고 싶다 생각을 했었습니다.
Solar Wind is a project I've made. It was a public commission in Paris, and during the preparation of the competition, I met a guy in charge of the National Center of the Space Research, and he mentioned a concept very interesting to me. It was the meteorology of the space. So I discovered with him that beside the Earth meteorology and weather concern, and also, of course, also climate concern and Anthropocene reflection, another field was appearing with some other issues. For example, a solar storm can affect the electricity, the electrical installation in one city, and it already created some blackouts somewhere like in Canada. So it was interesting for me as an artist always to, and in general, to always have a kind of parallel practice and not to be where all the other try to go. So because the Anthropocene was a kind of main subject, I decided to do this project about this other type of meteorology. And also because I think it was interesting, it gives a kind of distance to our concern, but it gives also the consciousness that we are also affected by extraterrestrial waves and storm. But in this project there are two different levels of scientific collaboration. So the first was with this National Center for Space, and the second one was with the Institute of Optics in France, because I didn't find some available technologies to have this kind of light. It's 40 meters high, and we did some testing with the most famous brand of lightning, and it didn't work. So I had to collaborate with a group of young engineers, and they created for me and for the project a special device able to screen with this kind of power. The power is so strong that you can see it from a plane above Paris. So it's really interesting. Again, it's linked with this kind of outside, outdoor and public practice that I like. And it's linked with this idea to install some artwork in the sky of the city.
이 작품을 이제 우리는 슬라이드로 보고 있기 때문에 일종의 이제 스펙터클처럼 시각적인 볼거리처럼 생각을 할 수도 있지만, 실은 그 작가님 작업에서 중요한 점이 어떤 상태에 대한 작업이라고 저는 생각이 들어요. 그래서 이 상태라는 것은 사실 이 잡을 수 없는 것이잖아요. 우리가 기존에 감지하고 있다고 생각했던 것들을 이 작업을 통해서, 이 작업이라는 개입을 통해서 갑자기 알 수 없게 돼버리는 그런 상태, 그런 상태를 우리 앞에 제시해 주시는 그런 성격의 작업이다. 저는 좀 그렇게 정리를 해볼 수가 있을 것 같습니다. 영상 작업에 대한 이야기를 조금 해보려고 하는데요. 기존에 하셨던 영상들 한 두어 편을 잠깐 보면서 이야기를 이어나가면 좋을 것 같습니다.
This is Artificiality. It's commissioned by the Musée d'Orsay in Paris 2 years ago approximately, and the idea was to react to a big exhibition they had about Darwinism and the changes of the representation status during the evolution of the art history before and after Darwin. The invitation they made was for me to do something more about the future and to have this reflection about new way to represent the reality. And the question of my work was, what could be the tools and the territories for a new explorator in the 21st century? So I decided to work with existing footage and also with LiDAR scanner to explore a new reality. It's more, and of course the title is Artificiality, so it's about what is artificial, natural, real, virtual. So the movie is a kind of new territory where we don't know exactly which part of the, and it was interesting, of course, because I've made this project during the lockdown, so it was also another way to work, because at this time, of course, not any travel were possible. So it was also a kind of really interesting moment to be able to focus more on the editing rather than the shooting. The work you will see in the exhibition, Anima, was the first shooting I was able to do after the lockdown. So it was again possible to move. And for Artificiality, it's also the moment I start these double flowers. So they are like kind of flowers, new spaces of the future.
그라소 작가님의 영상이 몰입을 시키는 영상이라고 생각이 되는데 빨려 들어가는 것 같은 그런 몰입의 경험을 할 수 있게 해주는 작업이 아닌가 그런 생각이 들면서 그럼 이제 우리 이 전시에서 보여드리고 있는 아니마라는 작업의 메이킹 필름을 좀 보도록 하겠습니다.
La caméra elle-même est une espèce d'entité, de machine à laquelle on pourrait attribuer une intériorité, un fonctionnement propre.
For my practice, I try to also control, as a kind of freak control, everything linked to my project. So the communication, the leaflet, the advertising is part of the project because it has to be artistic, it has to be creative.
On voit aussi un pyrophone qui est un instrument qui produit du son à l'aide de flammes et de tubes de verre en mouvement.
So the making of was also a very long process by deciding what to give, what to keep secret, what's a good point of view to explain and to give the access also of to the fabrication of one project like that. Anyway, that's true. Even with just one picture, you can understand there is a team, we use a Steadicam, we are in a forest, and these are already important information. I was lucky enough to work with people from the cinema industry since the beginning of my film practice. But even this kind of project cost a lot because we were like 30 people in the forest for 1 week in very difficult conditions with a Fox train for the cinema, with this kind of big glasses instrument, pyrophone we call it. Also we had some little fires because we tried to do special effect but with real fires, and finally we did it with the post-production. We use LiDAR scanner, so I had more and more layers. Each day had another idea, so that's tricky also because it could be boring to mix too many layers. But yeah, it was, each shooting is a kind of very strong experience and experiment. Going back to this idea of a state of something atmospheric, about the mood I try to create with my work in general. It's true that the idea is to play with the brain of the viewer at different level. There are like the abstract part of a work of art, you know, it's a mix of color, motion, when you have moving picture, light, but also today for the artist it's really common to use the lighting, the architecture, the sound, even the smell. But I try also to work with the history of the places. I'm interested by places to organize shooting in different locations and places, but also, as you said before, by the institution itself and the history of the institution. So you have this level of sensoriality, the level also of the memories of the viewer, but also the soundtrack is really important because it helps really strongly to create a mood, and it oriented the meaning of the picture. So these different components and parameters allow to create a certain mood. And what is really strange, it's true, is that there is nothing special happening in my movie, but people stay in front of for hours. So since, I mean, for now, each time we have presented a new movie, we had this kind of magics and very good audience.
화면이 그렇게 전환이 되면서 마치 계속 이제 들려오던 그 사운드 트랙이 이 공간을 이 소리 자체가 움직이는 것 같은 그런 이제 공감각적인 현상이, 그러니까 저는 저의 경험 차원에서는 일어나더라고요. 사운드에 대한 부분을 조금 더 얘기 들어보고 싶습니다.
Really, basically, because they are not really actors and dialogue in my movie. They give a lot of attention to things that are less important in a normal cinema movie from the movie industry. So it's really important. The sound is really important, the music. And it helps me to create a certain mood, as I said before, to amplify the meaning of the project. And I was lucky, like for the different DOP I work with, I was also lucky to work with really interesting music composer, like Nicolas Godin from the group Air in France, and Warren Ellis from the group of Nick Caves and the Bad Seeds. So they are really interesting music composer because they work also with new technologies, but also with really classical music instrument. And they created some sound and some music for my video. So it's nothing, it's completely a new commission each time. And I did 2 different work with Warren Ellis, Anima and Artificiality. So it's really a chance to work with them because they are really used to, they work for cinema, they work for concert as well, and more personal project. And in the past, I also, and also recently, I also used waves and different kind of frequencies in a project I've done. So it's again another layer. We did a kind of media archaeology to find the frequencies used by certain scientists to cure people or try to cure people. And in different exhibition projects I've done, I installed some artwork generating frequencies. So this is another part and very interesting because my work deals a lot with the invisible part of the world. So it's also a way to reflect this interest by really spreading frequencies and waves in the exhibition space and to expose the viewer to another kind of artistic material.
전시 전체로 이 시야를 좀 넓혀보도록 하겠습니다. 이 전시를 구성하는 이 개별적인 작품들이 있지만 전시를 하나의 또 다른 하나의 작품으로 보아야만 비로소 온전하게 경험할 수 있는 그런 성격을 가지고 있다고 생각이 됩니다. 그 요소들이 변이되고 증폭되고 여러 매체를 가로지르면서 조각이 될 때도 있고 회화가 될 때도 있고 영상이 될 때도 있고 그리고 그것이 이제 전시일 때도 있고 이런 요소들이 계속 변이되고 증폭되면서 이 작업의 내용과 외연이 계속 그 확장되는 그런 모습을 보여주고 계신다고 생각이 됩니다. 이 영상 속에 아까 그 등장한 인간 캐릭터뿐만 아니라 그 안에 등장하는 여우라든가 꽃이라든가 돌이라든가 인간이 아닌 비인간 존재들을 동일하게 행위자로 놓고 작업을 하시는 그런 부분에 대해서 조금 여쭤보려고 합니다.
So yes, you can recognize some artwork in previous exhibition and they move from one location to the other as it could be also seen in certain scientific theory like the string theory or the quantum mechanic theory and it's like I have a kind of I have different tools that I use to create a general vibration and yes, there is a difference between hanging artwork on a wall or creating an exhibition and creating a kind of immersive and conceptual and sensorial project. So the idea is to amplify and to create this interaction between the silver on the painting with the light of the video and the reflection of the anechoic sculpture on this wall, and also to have some chapters and to have different level of different layers of meaning. So the machine, there is in my catalog Soleil Double, we have some here. There is a chapter about all the machine I created. I like this idea. It's a kind of general idea in my work of a kind of mysterious function of an object. Of course, as an artist and as a viewer, I'm attracted by the magical power of certain artwork. I think that today we have a lot of objects, but very often, or decorative objects, but they are not often animated by a kind of a vibration, by a power, by a belief, and that's for me the magical power of art is when an object becomes something else than what it seems to appear, and when he transmits, when there is a kind of transmission and a kind of radiation. That's the reason I'm interested also by this machine, because they appear as something in function.
중요한 이야기인 것 같아요. 사실은 작가님은 그러니까 예술적인 실천을 통해서 지금 말씀하신 부분들, 그 사람과 사물의 어떤 새로운 관계를 얘기하셨지만 원래 우리는 인간이 이 주체성, 행위력을 갖고 이 사물들을 대상으로서 그 주체성을 발휘하는 행위력을 발휘한 대상으로 여겼잖아요. 이제 근대적인 사고에서는. 그러나 이제는 인간과 비인간의 그런 이분법적인 구도를 다시 생각해야만 한다라는 그런 논의들이 굉장히 많이 이루어지고 있고, 그 논의들이 이루어지는 여러 가지 이유 중에 하나는 바로 이 지구의 문제, 이 생태계의 문제에 대한 우리 인류의 어떤 각성, 이제 그런 것들이 이런 사유를 이제 촉발시켰다고 볼 수가 있을 것 같습니다. 아니마 속에 담겨 있는 장치, 이 기계들에 대해서 조금 얘기 들려주시면 좋을 것 같아요.
Yeah, in Anima we can see a pyrophone. It was an invention of a few centuries. It's a machine able to produce sound with the fire. So there are some fire in a glass tube, and these glass tubes are moving, and the motion create different sound. That was really interesting because I was working with this idea of little fire floating near this pagan wall for the movie, and we found this machine, and it was a perfect machine. So we installed it for the shooting of the movie, but also for the opening we had it. And it's a strange object, like the one I described before. You know, this one is a little bit more clear and obvious because you can see that there is fire and you can hear the sound. So basically, you understand very quickly what is happening. But in the meantime, because we never see this kind of machine before, it remained really interesting.
사실 이제 작가님은 그러니까 우리가 미디어 아트를 한다라고 규정을 하는 것은 싫어하실 것 같아요. 그런데 이 이제 미디어라는 것이 우리가 흔히 생각하는 작업을 할 때 쓰는 매체뿐만 아니라 어떤 매개의 행위라고 그 미디어를 생각을 해보면 이 작가님의 작업 속에서 다뤄지고 작업 속에 담겨 있는 기계적인 장치 혹은 어떤 자연의 요소들 또 인간 비인간인 어떤 존재들 이 모든 이 행위자들이 벌이는 어떤 현상 지금 작가님이 작업을 통해서 우리 앞에 제시해주고 있는 이 현상 속에는 시간의 문제가 굉장히 중요하게 자리 잡고 있다고 여겨져요. 그러니까 굉장히 그 역사적인 어떤 순간의 시간 또 지금 우리가 이 전시를 보고 있는 순간의 시간들이 굉장히 새롭게 어떤 선형적인 과거에서부터 현재로 이어진 어떤 선형적인 시간의 축이 아니라 작가님의 작업을 통해서 새로운 시간 경험으로 우리가 그것을 받아들일 수 있다. 작가님께 궁금하신 점 자유롭게 편하게 좀 얘기해 주시면 이 자리를 마무리하는데 아주 좋을 것 같습니다.
Yeah, Studies into the Past is a series I started in 2009, and it's a kind of mix of different temporalities. The idea is to extract some phenomenon from my movie practice and to install this phenomenon, this cloud or whatever, because I have a kind of catalog of different phenomena I play with, and they appear in a historical background, like the cloud that you can see in a Flemish painting from the 17th century. So it's more about the notion of time and this idea of time travel rather than the history of art itself. I have the history of art as a kind of marker, as a kind of sign of the history of the past, more than the content and the specificity of the painting itself. So I think that for the artists today, the time is a kind of new material that we can use and play with. It's like a scientific project where it requires the help of some restorers to use the same material and the same support, and also to give a kind of aging, artificial aging, to give the feeling of an object coming from the past to us. So it's more than just a kind of painting practice. It's on one side a conceptual project about time travel, and also about this dream to create an object from the past.
그 이제 말씀하신 Studies into the Past 그 작업 보시면 이제 구름 같이 보이는 것들이 이제 둥둥 떠 있잖아요. 그리고 이제 아니마 영상 속에도 그 구름의 존재를 이제 보실 수가 있을 것입니다. 하나의 장소에서 또 다른 장소로 하나의 시간성에서 또 다른 이 시간성으로 그리고 어떤 한 상태에서 또 다른 상태로 계속 그것을 옮겨서 어떤 말씀하신 그것을 주파수라고 표현할 수도 있겠고 어떤 진동이라고도 표현할 수 있을 텐데 그런 어떤 울림, 어떤 상태, 어떤 현상 혹은 어떤 정령, 어떤 분위기의 울림을 느껴보실 수 있으면 좋을 것 같습니다.